Okay, right. So this is something that's really close to my heart. This is a charity called Nature Safe, and it's come a lot from these technologies that we've learned today that Lucy's doing. Lucy's on the scientific committee of Nature Safe as well, and I think this is something that's incredibly special. Actually, before I do that, I'll just have to unshare it for 2 seconds because I think I can share it. Time. Right, that should be better. And with Nature Safe, you know, it's in our 3rd year now. So I'll just a few. And it's really come from the equine side. So we thought if we can freeze a Shire or Suffolk or Cleveland Bay or preserve those tissues, why can't we throw this across to other species? To our amazement, there's very little out there. You've all heard of the Millennium Seed Bank. I think Lucy spoke about it. Where's the one for animals? There isn't one. San Diego Zoo have been doing it 40 years ago, but collectively putting it together. So this is where the foresight came up and brought a group of people together to do this work of literally regenerating and freezing down cells. And it's to save animals from going extinction by regenerating reproductive cells and cell lines. And the acronym of SAFE stands for Saving Animals from Extinction. It's quite sad where we're at. We hear it on the news all the time. We're facing the 6th mass extinction of all time. It's not a made up thing. It is actually happening here and now for many, many different reasons. And we've lost an average of 69% or nearly 79% of populations have declined just in the last 50 years. It's quite sad when you look at it. We nearly lose 50 to 100 species a day. And it's quite a sobering thought, that. A lot of the time we don't know some of these species that are disappearing. Yes, there are some species that are coming along, but we are one tool in the toolbox that's out there in conservation in trying to freeze them down and bring them back. And the UK is known as one of the most, we can get rid of that bar. Move it across. That's not bad. The UK is known as one of the most nature depleted countries in the world, believe it or not. I didn't even realise this the other day, and Lucy pointed it out when she was doing some research on it, which is really sad. And so we've just started actually looking into the UK species. We froze our first Scottish wildcat the other day and our first red squirrel, which is really good. So we are just starting, but actually freezing UK species actually is more difficult than the ones in the zoos, because it comes back to a lot of what Andy's doing in his work about when you're preserving genetics, you want to know what they are. If you get, I wouldn't say roadkill, you get an animal that dies on the road, you don't know its genetics, you don't know what it's died from, whereas from a zoo, you do know its genetics, you know what it's died from. So it's really important what we bank, we know that. So it's actually, it was a lot more complicated than I thought to do this. So yes, climate change is going up. Obviously, the climate is warming up, which means certain species can't survive in this, and that's why we have to try and preserve those genetics as soon as we can, because we're losing at such rates. So if we do get our house in order, at least we've got a bank of them that we can, in theory, bring them back in the future. And obviously, we need the biodiversity of our planet for us as a species to survive. And that is really, really important. So, you know, obviously the change of the biodiversity of our planet, you know, will impact everything on Earth. And obviously that's why it's not just the rhinos or the elephants we've got to save. We've got to save the insects. We've got to save everything that contributes to our amazing planet. So how does it work with Nature Safe? So we're collecting samples. We're freezing them down. I've gone through how this works. As I said, there's lots of biobanks out there storing samples at -80. There's some biobanks that store thousands of samples, but they're looking at the DNA. Where we're different, we're keeping these cells alive, which I explained earlier, at -196 by sort of dehydrating that cell and keeping it in a living format. And they say, yeah, we saw these slides before, and it's literally just by taking the water out of them. So it's exactly the same as what Lucy's been talking about. When an animal passes away, we get the ear. We also get the reproductive samples as well. You're right.
Just on the remotes for TVs are going to go off.
Oh, right. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
So we get the reproductive cells or the ear samples, and it's usually when an animal passes away in America, they take it from live animals. Under sort of the veterinary rules over here, you can't do anything to an animal, doesn't benefit the animal, or it does say or the immediate group. So that's open to interpretation to what the veterinary is doing at that time. I think Lucy has showed this a slide like this, haven't you, Lucy? A bit like this, and this, I think, this tells the whole story. We've got all the animals going into the tank here, and we've got these technologies here. But here's the unknown. When they first froze the Brzezowski horse, the black-footed ferret, 40 years ago, they never knew they were going to clone it. Didn't have a clue. They froze it just in case. And whether this is an elephant or rhino or a fell or a Cleveland Bay, or I'm not trying to put any analogies together, but it's the same thing. We are freezing down for the unknown, because once those genetics are gone, they've gone forever. And the tissue one might be hard to get your head round, but it's just one way, a very cheap way of catching that animal's genetics forever. If I was to take a picture of you 20 years ago and say, right, I'm going to send this to New Zealand, Australia, you think I'm mad. How can you do that? Technology moves on at such a rate. In fact, our biggest problem is how do we keep up with it? It is. And applying it, I think we're on Click. I think anybody watched BBC Click, heard of BBC Click? I think next week or the week after we're on that, with Gem's going to be on there about new technologies on that side. So you've heard of Kew Gardens. Obviously, we said we like to be the Millennium Seed Bank for animals, basically. We've got lots of zoos on board. Without zoos, we couldn't do this work. So we've got so many zoos on board, which is fantastic. This next video, I've watched 50, 100, 200 times. I don't know. I think every time I watch it, the hairs on the back of my neck go up. I do say this every time I watch it because it does. These are the last two northern whites on the planet. There's no more left. That's it. Effectively, they're extinct. They're mother and daughter. They can't breed. Anyway, I'll let Richard Vine explain.
Hello everybody, my name is Richard Vine and I'm talking to you from the Old Pejeta Conservancy in Kenya. Behind us you can see the last two remaining northern white rhinos on the planet, and we are doing our best to recover this species from the brink of extinction. Both are infertile and therefore artificial reproductive techniques are the only options that are open to us. Nature's Safe is also playing a critical role in saving the world's biodiversity by creating one of the first living tissue banks on the planet. Their work is incredibly important, and we look forward to working with them in the future.
And obviously, we can't let that happen, and we don't want to let this happen. So obviously, for many of our rare equine breeds as well, and we have got the technology now, in theory, to stop that from happening. We've talked about the samples that we need to freeze. We've talked about how we can use these, like epididymal sperm, take the seed from the testes. This was an omega that we did, luckily it's an equid, so it's easy for us to do, and it worked incredibly well. Doing cheetah, they're incredibly inbred. Cheetahs. Their semen quality isn't good, their reproductive system, they have issues. Again, it's hard to say, is that inbreeding? We believe it is, but we haven't got concrete evidence, but we just presume it is. But this particular one died in Chester. We managed to get some semen and freeze it down. And have you heard of a mouse deer? Yeah, one of the smallest deer in the world, incredibly rare. I mean, the horse's testicle weighs about 300 or 400 grams. A mouse deer weighs 1.3 grams. So trying to extract semen from that is incredibly difficult. But we managed to get some. Yeah, and you can see it down here. The mountain chicken frog. I've spoke about this before. Somebody said it was a pub quiz, I think, didn't they? And said, is it a chicken or is it a frog? But I can tell you, it is a frog. And now we've got the technology using Nottingham-Trent University to have an amazing look at these. No one's ever seen a picture of a mountain chicken frog sperm before. Is that a normal one? Is that an abnormal? We don't really know until we start getting more data. But there's all these technologies out there. I was fortunate enough to go to London Zoo, or me and Lucy in, I think it was July time. Again, this was a lion that was, this particular breed was very inbred. Wasn't getting its anything pregnant, so we looked at it and had very poor semen quality. Again, it's hard to say, was that genetic, was that inbreeding? But a lot of it does point to one source. Yeah, it was incredible to be up so close and personal. This is any of you heard of called a Von Sera? That's what I didn't either. And it's quite often when you work in the zoo, I said, oh, we're going to see if we can freeze off a Von Sera. So of course you're Googling it, trying not to look stupid to see what a Von Sera is. I think it's like a type of mongoose, isn't it, Lucy? Isn't it? I think that's, yeah. Anyway, 80% of the time when we do this, it doesn't work because you're dealing with an animal that's never been done before. So you're just trying your best. But this was incredible. We think Pam did quite a few down in the lab, was looking at different ways and trying to match up with animals. And the post-thaw the next day was incredible. So this is one of our big successes. So it's not just about freezing this particular animal down. It's now we set up a protocol for all of this particular species in the future. If ever they want to freeze semen down, you've got a protocol straight away, which is a massive win. So that was quite incredible. Extracting semen we did 5 males, 4, I think 1 didn't have regular semen, but the other 4 did. And I think there's only 4 in Europe, 4 in the UK or something. No, like 5 or 6 in Europe. Sorry?
Get it off and ejaculate.
So you use what you call electroejaculation. That's it. Yeah. So the anaesthetized. That we only do this when a lot of these animals have to have what's called repro checks. So they're anaesthetized anyway. So we never do this work just for this purpose. They're undergoing an anesthetic procedure anyway. So it's literally an electric probe up its rectum. And yes, yeah, when you're doing lions, you wouldn't want to do it any other way. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But we do the same with elephants, exactly the same, and rhinos. So they're all done this way. And also we, yeah, very carefully, yeah. So, and then obviously collect the ovarian tissue and the testicular tissue, and these are some animals that we take the ovarian tissue and sliced it up. And we believe in the future you may be able to grow the eggs in a lab in the future, but this is sort of still hasn't been tried and tested. And I think Lucy spoke about this, you know, the possibility of turning a skin cell into a sperm and egg. But these are the technologies that we know about now, but there's going to be future ones in the future. This is a cheetah that Lucy froze down in 2019, part of its ear. 2 years later, she woke the ear up. And every one of these cells got about 2.5 billion DNA pairs that make up that animal in. See a few of these? And then a week later, there's millions of them. And the beauty about this system, having sperm, you can regenerate. When you freeze semen, you have a straw. Once that straw's been used, it's gone. So if you have 100 straws, you've only going to use 100 times. That makes sense. Obviously, the cloning side that we spoke about, this is the Brzezowski horse. Effectively, this horse is 40 years old, in theory, because the skin sample was taken 40 years ago. It's not aged out, you know, that, but it's a young foal, but effectively that it is. And they had the foresight to freeze that. And now they've done a second one, she called Ollie now, and they've done a ferret called a back-footed ferret, where there's only I think 4 different genetic lines left them, and they were virtually all wiped out by December. And somebody had the foresight to freeze them down. This is what we're talking a lot about today, is about the foresight in the future, and we've got to think about that in the future, because you don't know what's around the corner, and we don't want to be leaving it to the next generation saying you have the ability to do it, but you didn't. So yeah, global conservation is something that we can all take part in. I find it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I think a lot of you are doing this, maybe most of you are doing this through passion. Most probably all say it's not through finances. I know we're all not making money out of this, through passion, and there is something very, very rewarding. But by working together, and I know that's sometimes very difficult, sometimes because we've got different points of view and different ideas, we can achieve those goals. We can change these species and these breeds. And our vision is to set up hubs all over the world for nature safe, because with endangered species, you can't move them across borders. So the idea is to set up these hubs. And our first hub is going to be in Ireland, actually. I was literally there last week with Andrew Mooney, and that's our first one at Dublin Zoo. And so far to date, we've frozen from 235 different species in the last 3 years. We've frozen down. But with sort of 6 or 7 million species on the planet, we've got a long way, obviously, to go. And say we're just started doing UK native species, which is really exciting. But we'd all, I know you're all a lot of you tied up in the equines. If you're interested in this, we'd love to hear from you. No matter if it's fundraising events or whatever it may be, we're always interested in donations or whatever it might be, because without the goodwill of people out there and the funding, we could not exist. We are a charity, and that's the only way we can function to save many of our endangered species. And I don't know whether many of you heard of the Earthshot Prize. I think there were about 3,000 or 4,000 nominated. We got through, we think, we got through to the second stage, which we think we got through to the last 150, which is incredible. Unfortunately, we didn't get through to the last 5, which is £1 million. But I think it just shows how important they thought Nature Safe was. And 1 is to get nominated, was amazing, but 2, to get to the last round was incredible. So we're not going this year, but we're going to maybe try 2025, try and go again. So, and obviously we got recognised with the Queen's Award for the work of Nature Safe. And I'll leave this as the last. I think if David Attenborough says it's right, it's got to be right. Yeah, you could say that the skies are, I don't know, fluorescence or something. We'd all believe it. He's one of those characters, amazing guy, and he did something called the mating game. And this applies not just to endangered species, to any animal already out there. By using current technologies, if we wish, we have the ability to save any animal, or at least to save its tissue, until we discover how. And I think that's quite a fitting end to today. We are going to have a bit of a discussion panel, because I think it really does bring home, it's in your hands, it's in the society's hands. We can obviously help facilitate this, but it really shows what the power of doing about biobanking can be. And I hope you've enjoyed that last bit, but thank you very much today, and we were going to have a bit of a discussion.